Hello guys, today we're going to be talking about our latest victim, a so-called pastor by the name of Brandan Robertson. Am I only talking about them because they're gay and not because they're preaching unbiblical heresy? Yes, that's the reason why. Am I doing this because I'm homophobic?
I quickly became homophobic. Hating on gay people became part of my lifestyle.
But anyways, let's start this video. So the first thing that Brandan has preached is, doesn't the Bible say being gay is a sin? And he says no. But there's many verses where it condemns the act of homosexuality. It's not really that hard to find these Bible verses about a specific topic. You can literally Google them away and then you'll have your answer, is being gay a sin? And there we go. There's many verses about it. Now the second thing that Brandan says is, why don't you deny yourself and follow Jesus? Now personally, I would reword this and say, why don't you stray away from sin and follow Jesus? But Brandan contradicts himself and says, I do every day, but that doesn't mean I have to repress my homosexuality. So Brandan is basically indulging and encouraging this said act of sin in the Bible. And I'm not saying you have to necessarily be sinless to be in heaven or to see God or anything like that, but you should try your best to not sin as much as you can in your life, or at the very least try your best not to practice the same sinful routine you have every day. The last thing that Brandan says is, do gay Christians have to celibate? And obviously he says no. Celibate or celibacy is abstraining from marriage and sexual relations, typically for religious reasons. Now while marriage and having intimacy with your partner is not inherently wrong, the problem with Brandan saying is that gay marriage should be allowed and having intimacy with the same gender should be okay. Because in the Bible, in Genesis chapter 2 verse 24, it says, this is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. The Bible is explicitly saying that a marriage is between a man and a woman, not of the same gender.
The problem is not that anti-LGBT people of faith are too faithful to their traditions, but that they are not faithful enough. It is unfaithful to oppose the equal dignity of any human being. It is unfaithful to demonize love in a tradition that says God's fundamental nature is love. And it is unfaithful to read one's own fear and prejudice into an ancient text and use it as a weapon against the very people God has honored. For far too long, church, we have conceded this ground. For far too long, we have allowed fear-driven religious leaders to define who belongs at God's table. It's past time that we reclaim what has always been ours.
Where in the Bible did God specifically say that he honors homosexuality? That's right, there is none. And I've already shown many Bible verses from previously before that God opposes the idea of homosexuality. And the thing that these so-called pastors bring up is love and acceptance. The thing that they forget to mention is that yes, we should accept people, but we shouldn't accept everything that they do or every sin that they commit. Like, if I show you this guy and he has to go in your house, would you accept him to be inside your house? Of course not. If this guy wants to meet your children for a cupcake, would you let him? Of course not. If you have a friend that's struggling with alcohol, do you endorse their said action? Absolutely not. This is what we call righteous judgment, and it's also a part of love. If you have someone who is in desperate need of a problem or they're committing atrocities in their life, then you do your best to stop them from committing those said actions.
What does it mean to sin? This is actually a complicated question, and it's been debated for thousands of years in various religious, ethical, and philosophical traditions, and different traditions come up with different definitions, and oftentimes those definitions evolve pretty significantly over time. As a progressive Christian, I root my definition of sin in the teachings of Jesus in the Gospels and the example of the Apostle Paul, and I simply think that to sin is to do something that causes moral harm to oneself, another, the world around you. That is sin.
No, no, no. That is not sin. Sin is not about simply being offensive or saying something offensive to someone and that hurts their feelings. Let's say I was a doctor, right? And my patient was clinically obese and I have to tell them they have to lose the weight, otherwise they might die from respiratory or heart issues. So if we're going by that logic by saying that, oh, sin is about hurting someone's feelings, then I would lie to them and say that, hey, you're okay, you should be fine. Then I'm practically not sharing my love because I'm not telling them what is right. This is not only scandalous, but this is pretty deceptive. You do not get to rewrite what God has said and established for us. You're not God, you're not a pastor, and you're simply just a twink who is only preaching hearsay.
It's time that we start insisting that true Christian faith calls us to authenticity, celebrates broad diversity of humanity, and celebrates as we evolve and expand our understanding of God and the world. And that is why this morning I say from this historic pulpit on this Pride Eve service, according to the true faith of Jesus, homophobia is heresy. Transphobia is a transgression against God. And there is no justification in our faith tradition for treating queer people as less than the beloved children of God that they are.
Nowhere in the Bible did God say that homophobia is hearsay, nor did it say that transphobia is transgression, but I digress. The problem with these pride churches, or the alphabet churches I'll say, is that they have an issue when it comes to actually talking about God. They only talk about gay rights, they only talk about trans rights, they only talk about like modern day philosophies, and there's nothing wrong with mentioning it once in a while, but that's the only thing they talk about. Like, if I want to hear what Democrats have to say, I hear a politician talking about this in a public space, not in church. Because I'm going to be honest with you guys, what does LGBTQ topics teach me in life? Does it teach me about marriage? Does it teach me about family? Does it teach me about how I should treat others? Does it teach me anything that is substantial? No, it does not teach me that. It does not teach me about Jesus. It does not teach me about God. It doesn't teach me about the events that happen in the Bible. None of that. It does not teach you anything. And in Matthew's, it literally teached us about these false prophets. And here's the thing though, I have many friends who came out as openly gay, openly lesbian, bisexual, when you name it. But the thing is though, I don't try to encourage their sin lifestyle. I don't agree with it, yes. I certainly believe it's sinful, yes. I do believe in all those things, and I do care about them. And while I try my best to encourage them to stop doing their lifestyles, I don't try to attack them, I don't try to insult them, I don't try to degrade them in any way, saying that they have no chance in life or with God. No, I don't do any of that. And that's the problem with many people who come from the LGBTQ community, pride churches, and from those said communities I just mentioned. They believe that simply righteous judgment from the Bible is a form of hatred, it's a form of attack against them as a person, and this is the thing that I wish people can look more inward and outward about, is that just because you're gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, that doesn't define you as a person as a whole. There's more meaning to you in life than just simply being an LGBTQ person. The purpose of this video is not to spread hatred or harassment towards Brandan, no. It's mostly to expose the false teachings and hearsays that goes around these churches. But with that being said, I'm gonna go back to the graves and tell you more bizarre stories like this. And remember, just because it's judgment, it does not mean it's hatred. With that being said, goodbye.